The porch light flickered, casting her shadow long and sharp against the cracked wooden boards. I stood frozen in the kitchen, coffee mug burning my palm, watching her lean into him. Her lips brushed his cheek, soft, deliberate, like she'd done it 1,000 times. The world didn't stop, it just tilted. My chest tightened, air thinning, as if the house itself had sucked in a breath and held it. Her name was Leora. We'd been married 7 years, 3 months, and 12 days. I counted because I thought it mattered. Every anniversary, I'd carve a notch into the oak table we bought at that flea market in Port Haven. She'd laugh, call it silly, but her eyes would soften. Now that table sat untouched, gathering dust in the dining room we hadn't used in months. I didn't suspect her at first, not really. The signs were quiet, like whispers you only hear when the room goes still. Late nights at the gallery where she worked, her phone face down on the counter, the way her laughter felt borrowed. I'd ask, "You okay, Lee?" She'd smile, quick and tight, and say, "Just tired, Theo." My name sounded wrong in her mouth, like a word she was trying to forget. That night, I'd come home early from the bookstore. I owned a small shop downtown, the Lantern's Keep, where I sold used paperbacks and first editions to people who still believed in stories. Leora used to visit, curl up in the armchair by the window, her sketchbook open, pencil dancing. She hadn't come by in months. I should have noticed the absence sooner. I saw the car first, a sleek black sedan parked across the street, engine still warm, ticking in the autumn chill. Then I saw them. Him tall, sharp-jawed, in a coat that cost more than my rent. Her in that green scarf I'd bought her for Christmas, unwrapping it from her neck to drape over his shoulder, playful, intimate. The porch light caught her eyes, bright with something I hadn't seen in years. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The mug slipped, coffee splashing across the tile, hot against my bare feet. I wanted to scream, to shatter the window, to demand why. But I just stood there, watching her car pull away, his taillights fading into the rain-slick street. The house was too quiet after that. The fridge hummed low and mocking. Her perfume lingered, jasmine and cedar, faint on the couch cushions. I sat there until dawn, replaying every moment. The way she'd stopped wearing her ring to avoid paint stains. The way her texts came slower, shorter. The way she'd look past me like I was already gone. I found her sketchbook later, tucked under the couch. Pages of charcoal lines, faces I didn't recognize, hands entwined, none of them mine. One drawing, half-finished, showed a man with sharp cheekbones, his eyes smudged with her thumbprint like she'd pressed too hard, trying to make him real. I didn't sleep, I couldn't, my heart was a bruise, swelling with every beat. I wanted to call her, to hear her lie, to hear her truth, anything, but my phone stayed dark. The rain started, tapping the windows, each drop a question I couldn't answer. Why him? Why now? Why not me? By morning, I was hollow. I walked to the porch, the air cold and heavy with damp earth. Her scarf was there, caught on the railing, green and frayed. I held it, the fabric soft against my knuckles, and felt the world tilt again. She was gone, and I was still here, holding the pieces she'd left behind. The days blurred, each one grayer than the last. The bookstore became my refuge, its shelves a maze I could hide in. Customers noticed my silence, my clipped answers. "You okay, Theo?" they'd ask, their voices soft, like I was fragile. I'd nod, force a smile, and turn away, shelving books I hadn't read in years. Leora's absence was loud. Her easel stood empty in the spare room, paint tubes dried out, brushes stiff. I'd walk past it, expecting her laugh, her voice calling me to see a new sketch. But the house was a tomb, echoing with what used to be. I'd lie awake, the bed too big, her pillow still holding the shape of her head. I saw traces of him everywhere. A coffee receipt in her coat pocket, 2 lattes, one with oat milk, her order from a cafe across town. A photo on her public Instagram, her hand resting on a man's wrist, his watch gleaming, expensive. Mutual friends mentioned him in passing, Jasper, they called him, a curator who knew everyone in the art scene. They'd laugh, say how lucky Leora was, working with someone so connected. I'd nod, my throat tight, my hands shaking in my pockets. She was happy. I saw it in her posts, her stories, bright galleries, champagne flutes, her smile wide and real. I hated how it looked like freedom. I hated how I still wanted to be the reason for it. I'd scroll through her life, a stranger's now, and feel the ache grow, sharp and relentless. I tried to move on. I boxed her things, her sweaters, her art books, her half-used candles, but I couldn't throw them out. They sat in the garage, a shrine to what we'd been. I'd go there sometimes, sit among the boxes, and remember her humming in the kitchen, her hair tied back with a paint-stained rag. One night I drove to the gallery, I don't know why. The windows glowed, warm against the drizzle. I saw her inside, laughing, her hand on Jasper's arm. He leaned close, whispered something, and she threw her head back, her laugh cutting through the glass. I stood in the rain, my coat soaked, my heart a stone. She didn't see me. I didn't want her to. I started writing to her letters I'd never send. Pages of questions, of pain, of love I couldn't unlearn. "Did I ever make you happy?" I wrote. "Was I enough?" The words felt like blood spilling across the page. I'd burn them in the backyard, the smoke curling into the night, carrying my grief to no one. Then one evening my phone lit up. Her name, bright and brutal, a text. "Can we talk?" My hands shook as I stared at it, the words blurring. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, the streetlights flickering. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again. Okay, I sent, my heart pounding, my world tilting once more. What did she want? Why now? I sat in the dark, waiting, the silence louder than ever. She stood in the doorway, rain-soaked, her eyes red and raw. The green scarf was gone, her hair plastered to her face. Theo, she whispered, her voice breaking on my name. I stepped aside, let her in, the air between us thick with unspoken things. The house felt smaller with her in it, like it remembered her too. She sat on the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. I stayed standing, leaning against the counter, the distance between us a chasm. I'm sorry, she said, her voice small, fragile. I didn't mean for it to happen. I wanted to laugh, to scream, but I just nodded, my jaw tight. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked, and her words hung there, heavy, incomplete. Why? I asked, my voice low, steady though my hands shook. She looked away, her eyes tracing the floorboards. I don't know, she said. Jasper, he saw me, really saw me. Not the wife, not the artist, just me. Her words cut sharp and clean, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't, not yet. I wanted to ask about the nights she'd lied, the days she'd spent with him, the moments she'd chosen him over me. But I didn't. I saw her guilt, the way her shoulders curled inward, the way her fingers clutched the edge of her sleeve. She was breaking, and I hated how it still hurt to see. We talked for hours, our voices soft, careful, like we were navigating broken glass. She told me about the gallery, the pressure, the way Jasper made her feel alive. I told her about the bookstore, the empty house, the way her absence carved me hollow. I loved you, I said, past tense slipping out raw and honest. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I still love you, she whispered, and I froze. The words were a weight, a hook, pulling at something I'd buried. I wanted to hold her, to erase the months, to be us again. But I saw his face in her sketches, his watch in her photos, his shadow in her smile. Love wasn't enough anymore. Stay, I said finally, my voice barely above a breath. Just for tonight. She nodded, her eyes searching mine, finding nothing but silence. I gave her the couch, a blanket, and walked to my room, the door clicking shut behind me. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't empty, not yet. Morning came soft, sunlight spilling through the curtains, painting the floor gold. I woke to the smell of coffee, the sound of her moving in the kitchen. For a moment I was back to mornings when she'd hum off-key, when we'd share toast in silence, when love was simple. She was at the counter, her back to me, her hands wrapped around a mug. I made coffee, she said, not turning. I nodded, though she couldn't see, and poured my own. We stood there, the space between us filled with light and regret. The house felt different, calmer, like it had exhaled. I'm leaving, she said, her voice steady now, back to my sister's. I need time. I didn't ask if Jasper was waiting. I didn't need to. Her eyes were clear, her guilt quieter, like she'd made peace with her own ruin. I envied that. We talked a little about nothing, weather, the bookstore, her next exhibit. It was polite, distant, like strangers sharing a bus stop. I wanted to tell her I'd burned her letters, that I'd kept her scarf, that I'd loved her too much to hate her. But I didn't. Some things are better left unsaid. She left at noon, her bag slung over her shoulder, her steps light on the porch. I watched from the window the way I had that night, but this time there was no tilt, no collapse. Just a quiet ache, like a bruise fading. The street was still, the air crisp, the world moving on. I went to the bookstore that afternoon, dusted the shelves, rearranged the poetry section. A customer bought a worn copy of Neruda, and I smiled, real this time. The shop smelled of paper and ink, of stories that didn't end in heartbreak. I closed up late, the city humming beyond the glass, and walked home under a sky bruised with dusk. Her scarf is still on the railing, green and frayed, catching the wind. I left it there, not as a reminder, but as a release. She left twice, once with him and once when I finally let her go.